Hello, and welcome. Welcome once again to the Secrets of the High Demand Coach podcast. And I am here with yet another high demand coach. It is the one, the only Jackson Calame, who teaches visionary entrepreneurs how to unlock sustainable revenue growth and expand their legacy. Jackson teaches businesses not only how to avoid failure, but also how to win by becoming a true leader in their market. Jackson and his teams prepare business owners and executives to bridge their growth gaps, and collectively, they often fill the COO, CMO, or even CEO roles during this transformative process. And he believes that developing an incredible culture built around a clear vision dedicated to customer satisfaction must be the focal point for any company's mission for them to thrive. Well, Jackson, we had the opportunity to meet several times now, but I think we first were introduced by my opportunity to appear on your show, Vision Pros, which is fantastic, by the way. Go check it out on Apple Podcasts. And now we get to turn the mics around. So glad to have you on the show. Wondering if you could, kind of before we dive in here, what got you into building first-class business and the work that you guys are doing right now?
Well, thank you, Scott, for having me. Awesome to I don't want to say return the favor. It's my honor to be here. Your book, by the way, the whole analogy on the coach run on the football field, catching the touchdown, dude, it just blew my mind. I've been meditating on that ever since. I've shared it with several people, told people like, wow, like you got to read this. This is so cool. So thank you for that. In terms of how we got started, I guess I have to own the fact that when I was in Uruguay, found out, had an epiphany that I needed to get into business, had no reason to do so, came home, went back to the BYU school, Marietta Business. And I said, look, I know I screwed up and have a 0.33 GPA, but I really need to get into this school. How do I do it? They didn't laugh me out of the room, but it was as close to as kind a version of that as it could be. They said, no, not a chance. So I ended up saying, you know what? If I'm not going to get in through the university, I just need to go find a business owner who's going to take a chance on me. And that led from one thing to another, pivots up until I realized I'm a service-oriented person. I don't like second-class service. I'm not going to provide it. We do things first class.
That's awesome. That's awesome. And one of the key areas you focus on helping founders to launch well, right? To be heard in the market. And one of the things that most folks listening to this will readily recognize is that with all the media available, it's actually never been easier to get your message out. But I don't know that it's ever been harder to get your message heard, right? So what can we do as founders, as business owners to really stand out as the clear choice in our market?
I think it's so easy to be heard, actually. The challenge is we don't know what to say. So when my daughter, I'll actually go forward, my kids went to that stage where they were 3 through 5, right? And when they scream, I want the candy, I want the candy, I want it, they're not going to get it. It ain't happening, right? And so the challenge, is how do we shift the way we talk about what we want into a position where we're serving people based on what people also need and want? And if we don't make that shift, we're going to sound like that tantrum child. And it doesn't sound like I just sounded. It sounds like, Scott, we have the best solution ever. Come and look at it. We've got case studies and we make $100,000 for people tomorrow. Like, whoa, like so many people are doing that. Meanwhile, Tony Robbins was smart enough several years ago to say, hey, let's come out with a documentary and let's call it, I Am Not Your Guru. Who won?
Yeah. And so how do we take that, right? Success leaves clues, but as founders, do we need to start thinking about our messaging and what are some practical steps on how to get that out into the real world?
Stepping into being genuine and authentic is a really important part of that for the way I go about things. Scott, you had some fun with me earlier. You talked about how my image changes like daily. And that's part of that is just being willing to step into, there's different sides of me that are important. And I'm willing to self-discover that. If we're chasing all the buzzwords, if we're going and looking for articles online that say the 7 steps to do this, the 3 steps to do this, we're oversimplifying the process of business. That oversimplification to me is what's driving, one of the biggest reasons that's driving people to fail. It would be like a patient. Think of the business owner as a patient going into the doctor and saying, hey doc, if you made less cuts when you did my heart surgery, it would be so much easier. You are right. It would be so much easier to do the thing, and you're going to die. Like, what are you doing trying to give me that advice? So as a business owner who's not a chief marketing officer, has never written a chief marketing officer description, right? A chief executive officers, a chief operating officers, these people are trying to step into roles they can't because there's so many coaches that want them to oversimplify, say, no, solopreneurs can win. The wantrepreneurs are doing awesome. Just because somebody says they're doing awesome doesn't mean they actually are. So we have to take a step back and look at the whole picture. I know it's a buzzkill, but we have to look at the real life versions of who's winning, how are they winning, what do their teams look like? And it's usually far more expansive than most business owners want to admit. Swallow that frog. Go for it. Do the right decisions. Don't tell the doctors in the world to make less cuts.
Yeah. So I think there's brilliant advice behind that. Now, one of the challenges with it is, if we're just starting out, we can't afford a full executive team. So what are some of the first steps that we can take in the process of moving toward that more expansive strategy and bringing in the help that we need?
I think it begins with eliminating that word, Scott. Can't. That's baloney. And not from you. I know you're speaking for the audience. When we tell ourselves we can't do something, I'm not talking about floating to outer space. I'm not talking about intangibles. I'm talking about being wise enough and humble enough to share the pie from the start, right? How do I recruit the LeBron James? If I want LeBron James in the next NBA league, I'm going to have to go to extreme lengths in order to gain the attention of somebody who's that attractive, right? Am I doing the right things to interview people, or am I shortcutting? Am I willing to sell my home and move into a smaller apartment because I know that the 100,000 or 200,000 that I can put into my business now is what's necessary to pull everything together at once, rather than once in a while buying a $50 solution, kind of like buying a sparkler on July 4th, right? And doing one sparkler at a time for the entire night. That entertains a 5-year-old, maybe a 3-year-old actually. But when it comes to business, if your investing strategy is to go cheap and to go small and to make cuts as fast as possible, you're going to end up with the 96% of people who lose within 10 years, or the 4% who survive. And I don't think that survival is the American dream.
Yeah, I agree. So who is it then that we need on our team? And the follow-up question to that is, what is the specific role that the founder needs to fill in a successful launch?
Yeah, I hope that everybody who's listening takes the Vision Pros aspect to heart. My belief is that you are the visionary of what you do. And so therefore it's important to know your strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. It's important to become very self-aware and open with whoever you're going to bring on to your executive team about what it is that you're lacking, what it is you don't do well. And as you open up that reality, if you are not qualified to be the CFO, you need to consider who can come in and help you with that role. If you're not qualified to be the chief executive officer that's really in charge of oftentimes PR, oftentimes bringing in the other C-level executives, oftentimes as well running the team dynamics, then and you're a visionary who wants to be out in the world or maybe doing fulfillment, then those types of roles gravitate towards your strengths. Bring people in who can help you with your weaknesses. It's not so much a matter, in my opinion, of defining the exact roles. I tried to do that at 23 after my second startup. And I was like, I'm going to create the perfect vision, so the perfect org board of all the roles that will work in every company. And it didn't take me more than an hour. That was a pretty long time to realize, when you run a restaurant, the titles of who works with you, expo, waiter, sous chef, exec chef, is very different than when you run a drilling company or when you run a digital marketing agency. So mapping that process out and bringing somebody in who's qualified to help recognize those dynamics. Again, if you try to do the surgery yourself, good luck. Some people have apparently figured it out. I've never met one.
Do you find that there are any themes around what the founder in particular has to hang on to? Are there any non-negotiables, or is it really as free form as whatever works for them?
I can only speak for myself on that, and the type of people that I work with. And for me, the non-negotiable is there are two very powerful elements for growth, influence, and power. One of them is hate. And it's easy to label people and say that, like Hitler led with hate, obviously, and he almost destroyed the world in the process. But we all have hate within us. We can't escape that. We have two sides of the coin. We get hangry, we react, we tell people what to do. We try to control people and tell them what to do. We get frustrated with people and tell them they're not very good at life by saying, you're not great at doing what you did. I'm disappointed in you. And we also have the power of love. And when we use the power of love, there's also people who've driven excellent missions and visions, from Martin Luther King to Jesus. And that dynamic of choice right there to me is one of those areas where, no, if I find myself gravitating towards hate and vices to guide, coerce, or manipulate, I need to make a shift back to the other side and say, no, I'm going to lead with principles of love. That's probably the only one for me. If I meditate on it, maybe there's more, but that would be the one that's absolute non-negotiable. I will not choose to use the powers of manipulation, coercion, inauthenticity, unethical behaviors. The first three people who react to this, are going to get X, Y, or Z product. There's no love in a manipulation tactic to grow.
Yeah, that's so true. That's so true. It brings me to a question. I actually asked this of all my guests. I'm interested to hear what you have to say, but what would you say is the biggest secret you wish wasn't a secret at all? What's that one thing that you wish everybody watching or listening today knew? The business is hard. That's the secret that everybody really knows and doesn't want to hear. And, if you want validation on that, go ask people how many people have read The Effective Executive by Dr. Peter Drucker. And it's shocking, how few people have read that book or even know about it. We try to oversimplify the process, and in reality, business is hard. So is life. We've got to learn to accept that, embrace it, and move into learning to do what's hard. Or we're basically on the bandwagon of get rich quick, even though we've learned to say that we're not. I was early in my the second part of my career as a coach, and was facing this challenge all over again. You feel like you graduate from it at some point, and you never do. And I was talking to another coach who'd been doing it for a while, and he said, just because it doesn't seem like it's working doesn't mean you're not doing the right thing. And I think it goes to this point that you have is, if we think that hard means wrong, right, we will abandon the things that are most meaningful. And if we think that hard is wrong, right, we'll constantly chase after strategies that promise, the quick fix, but fail to deliver. It's a powerful, powerful point. So folks are listening to this and they're just connecting with, finally someone who gets it, right? They understand it's not just, jazz hands and it's all better, but they want someone who can really partner with them to build on their vision. How can they get in touch with you? How can they find out more about the work that you guys do? Firstclassbusiness.io is a great place for business owners to go and start and see. And all the materials that are on there are very deliberate in terms of, if you study those materials out and you see what's there, that's an effective way to interview me. And I see too many business owners, once again, they think they found that person, they jump to the conclusion, they want to talk to them and hire them without doing any background research. I highly recommend doing the background research. And two, I'll double down on just one more piece of advice, and that is, when you're bringing in people with fractional C-level executives, for instance, make room for somebody to actually be a chief, and recognize that most of them have never been a chief in their life. They don't actually know how to tell you what they need to be doing in those departments. But if we aren't ready to be told like how things are going to go in a certain department and relinquish that control, it doesn't matter what type of person you bring in, it's not going to be an effective executive relationship. So First Class Business and visionproslive.com. If you're listening in, you'd probably be a fantastic guest for my show too. We'd love to have you. Fantastic. Well, Jackson, thanks so much for being on. Thank you so much for sharing this wisdom and truth throughout the episode today. Just really appreciate it. It's an honor having you here as well. And for those of you watching and listening today, your time and attention mean the world to us. I hope you got as much out of this conversation as I know I did, and I cannot wait to see you next time. Take care.